Shall we?
Welcome everyone. I'll keep checking to see if there's anyone else popping in. But yes, Jack, if you want to introduce yourself.
Hello everyone, thank you for joining. It's so great. We've been doing these daily. And so I'd like to introduce myself. My name is, for those of you who don't know me, is Jag Kumari, and I've been specializing in the construction industry for 18 years now. And I work as a health and safety consultant. And my concern is to make sure that builders understand their clients and builders understand their responsibility as an employer, and to ensure that they're doing everything they can to take care of their workers. And also to just highlight what you can do, like in these little toolbox talks, is what you can do today. But obviously what I ultimately do is help put systems in place and make sure everyone is safe.
Great, thank you. My name is Geeta. As you can see on my background, I'm a mental health consultant. I work with health and safety managers, mainly in construction, but also in other companies. Just basically with mental health. And I don't think people always necessarily make the connection between mental health and safety on site or in generally in health and safety. So my background is a therapist, and I used to work in construction, and it was during my time there that I realized construction especially needs some help and support with regards to mental health, and I'm using all my techniques as a therapist to bring that to the health and safety industry, just, you know, to help with regards to mental health. So that's me. Jag, we'll start with your slides. I'm just going to share my screen quickly.
We're just going to go through what we've done through the week first.
Yes.
Yeah, brilliant.
Okay, let me move that part. There we go. So there we go.
Okay, so just to let you know, guys, we've been running this daily toolbox talk every day this week. And so Monday we did mental health and welfare, well-being, causes of stress and pressure and mental health. Tuesday we did plant pedestrian safety and signs and behaviors of poor mental health and how they impact safety. Wednesday we did occupational health in construction and simple things that we can do to implement regarding mental health. All of these videos, by the way, have been recorded and there will be links available. So if you guys want to put your email addresses in the chat, what we can do then is send you the links for these. So if you did miss Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, we can send you those as well. And they'll be shared on LinkedIn, I think.
Yes, and I'll also share it at the end on the last slide. You'll see a bit.ly link.
So you can catch up on those previous ones as well.
Yes.
Brilliant. Okay, so today we are looking at working at...
Oh, hang on a second. There we go.
Yeah, working at height, and we'll be looking at some serious construction statistics as well.
Oops. And then tomorrow is just emergency preparedness.
Which is predominantly looking at stress and how that's having such a huge impact on the construction industry. So working safe at height. So this is based with, we can go on to the next slide.
Okay.
My daughter would have loved that slide, by the way. So we're looking at some statistics, right? So before we go into statistics, I'm just going to say working at height is covered by the Work at Height Regulations 2005. That's the piece of legislation specifically for working at height. So this was like this was amended in 2007 to include things like adventure trips, etc. But generally in construction, it's been the same since 2005. And basically, it started imposing a number of safety-related duties on employers because the number of accidents were continually rising. And so if we look at this first working at height statistic, 40 workers have suffered fatal injuries in 2018 to 19 from falling from height. And that's actually increased from the year before, right? So what does working at height mean? It means working in any place. Oh no, you can go back. It's okay, I can do it from here. Working any place, including a place at or below ground level, right? So that means if you're even one step higher than the ground, you're working from height. If you're one step lower than the ground, you're working from height. It's really as simple as that. There's no minimum height given. Just anything off ground level would be working from height. Gotta be careful to look at the right camera. Keep on looking that way because I've got you guys here. So, and also, so that means, for example, so if you did fall off a step, that would be working at height. If you slipped on a floor you tripped over a flat floor, that would not be covered under working at height. That would still be an accident, it would still be a hazard, but it wouldn't be covered under working at height. It would be probably Health and Safety at Work Act 1974. Then we've got obtaining access to or egress to such places while at work, except by a staircase or a permanent workplace. So, you know, this is where you're going to have to use something temporary, like a tower, an aluminium tower, scaffolding, a hop-up, you know, that anywhere where you're going to not be able to use the normal premise to reach it, and you have to use something temporary, it covers that as well. Okay, so yeah. So the next statistic we have here is, I mentioned that the fall of height remains the single biggest cause of work, and single-handedly the biggest cause of workplace fatalities in Great Britain, and it's the biggest industry is construction, and it's on the rise. It continually rises. So yeah, it went up last year from 35 to 40. And this figure, by the way, is just fatal injury, as in like we're looking at people who died, basically, right? There were other major injuries that impacted people over a long period of time. That's not covered in this particular statistic. That's actually a much bigger number. But we look at the kind of claims that go up against something like that as well. Over 2/3 were just from less than 2 meters. You know, and that's typically on a hop-up. You know, we've got something called a hop-up that we use in construction, or a step ladder. It could be a short step ladder. So, you know, that really highlights that 2/3 of the accident was something that low. We often think it's going to be off a roof or somewhere really high, but these accidents have caused the major injuries I'm talking about, where people have become disabled, where people can't walk anymore, where people have had brain damage, where people have had other impacts like financial impact because they can't work. So we'll go more into the mental health of it as well in a bit, but that's just from less than 2 meters high. Yep, next. Estimated 555,000 injuries in the UK, and 400 are known to be from falls from height. So these would be in that major injuries category that I'm talking about. They didn't die, but they got left with the consequences of a really bad fall. And then that equals to, on an average of 121 injuries a day. These are recent stats, everybody. This is not old. This is not from 5 years ago. These are all statistics in the last year. So, you know, that's what I want you to really get present to, that this is all recent, and this is happening. Okay, cool. And then most injuries will lead to a broken bone and weeks off work, or have other life-changing implications, right? So, you know, when I look at the life-changing implications, right, it's like I mentioned, like someone might have a hip injury, they're not going to be able to walk anymore. You know, someone might break their leg, someone might break their arm, brain injuries, you know, all these kind of injuries have led to then, you know, it's had a ripple effect. So you've had people who have then, sorry, who have then lost their marriages, right? You know, people have got divorces, people have ended up losing financial wealth, people have lost their mind basically because they just, you know, they've gone through so much mental health as well. So like, actually, I'd like Gita to just add a little bit there about that kind of impact, which we don't see physically.
Oh, right. Yeah, I guess well, I'm specifically thinking about a guy that is linked with me on LinkedIn, James Gorey, and he fell down some scaffolding and he literally broke his back, and he's been in a wheelchair. I think it's been 21 years now. So he goes around and does motivational talks. Obviously, he had to rebuild his entire house to make a wheelchair fit. There was a lot of time spent in hospital. There was a lot of friction and frustration for him, and friction with him and his wife. But that's just a small thing. It affects everyone in his family, really. Now, some people might just have an injury like a broken bone and they can heal from that. But again, that will be time out of work. They will have financial strain. They will have a lot of anxiety and panic, worries, unable to sleep. When you're not sleeping well, you can just imagine what you're like if you've had a bad night's sleep. You know, you're grumpy, you're irritable, you're short of fuse. So one thing leads on to the next, on to the next, on to the next. And mentally, it can have a huge effect on your life. And that spans out to everyone else around you, because it doesn't just affect you, it literally, I mean, if you're going to be angry all the time, that will affect your team, that will affect your management, your family life, everything. So I'm not sure if that was what you were looking for, Jan.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's exactly it, because it does. And that's the side, the human element, the human impact, like what happens to your life.
Yeah.
Your life is no longer the life that you had because of that accident, you know, and that's something that's really missing a lot of the time in a risk assessment. And, you know, like people just don't know, okay, what's the impact? If this person has an accident, what's really the risk? You know, the risk is this person is never going to have their life back.
Yeah. And I mean, sometimes we'll have like a broken bone and you can heal from it, but even the healing after that, not just about the broken bone, but your entire life takes so much longer to fall back into what it was, you know, back into that normal. And looking at a pandemic, it's affected all of our lives. It's going to take a long time for us to fall back into normal as well. So it's not just a quick fix. Okay, I've broken my arm and now it's healed and I can go back to normal. It takes a lot of time, and like we said, it's affecting everyone else around us too.
Yeah. And we just kind of like want to also to say these kind of things aren't spoken about because there's so much judgment on actually speaking about something like that as well. So it's about like being open about these things so that we can share that, okay, like if something's going to be like, just, I guess it's employers even understanding it's more than just a statistic, it's just more than costing you, it's costing them their life. So, you know, like if I look at it from a business point of view as well, if you're an employer, on average, if you have someone who had a single injury and was out of work for about 3 months and needed someone to help them around and everything, you could be looking at something like anything between what was the figure? It was about £60,000 just for a single injury, right? If that person ends up being out of work for a whole year and they decided to claim against you as a business, you could be looking at between £200,000 and £250,000. Like, you know, as a business, can you risk to be paying out claims like that as well? So that's the other thing to look. And this is why the working at height regulations is in place, because it does impose that you take care of your people, that you understand what are the risks and how are you going to control them to make sure you can prove if, like, you know, God forbid, an accident still happens and you've gone out of your way to do everything that you're supposed to do, you know, did you consciously put everything in place? So it's really worth looking at it from that point of view as well. Like most people would go bankrupt if they had to pay like that. And you know, the fines are now limitless.
Am I moving on?
Yes. So what can you do, right, as a business or as an employer, or even just, you know, if you're the worker, what can you do? There is a work at height hierarchy which is used which was created when the work at height regulations came into place. So firstly, can you avoid working at height in the first place? If the answer is no, typically the answer probably would be no there, right? You know, if the typical answer is no, then you're going to need to be looking at, okay, well, what can I use instead? Can I use something like extendable tools? You know, like, do I really need to climb up there, or can I nowadays, like, tools are getting very, very creative, and they want to meet these requirements and help people working from height. So they are creating extendable tools, right? Installing cables at ground level, lowering a lighting mist at the ground level, or creating some kind of edge protection on ground level. Okay, so if you can't avoid working on the ground, can you prevent a fall from occurring? Again, if no, you've got to minimize it, right? So again, you know, you could be looking at using a mobile elevating work platform, tower scaffolds. And then if you're going to use those things, you need to make sure people have been trained on how to use them, you know, and pre-checks are carried out, defects are looked at. So there'll be a whole bunch of training that will be required if you're going to use some kind of temporary at work equipment. Can you minimize the distance or the consequence of the fall? You know, so that, again, really look at that. What can I do to do that? Can I put safety nets in place? Can I put something, can I put some kind of landing system? Can I use a restraint system? That kind of thing. And then, you know, finally, the most common used plant for working from height is using ladders and step ladders. You know, it's really shocking how people, you know, when we say, are they trained to use a ladder? And the reason why we say that is because people really do neglect to notice if there's anything wrong with using a ladder. So the ladder may be defective. You know, you tend to have these hooks on the ladder. If they're defective and someone still uses them and they've got something heavy on that ladder, it's going to collapse. You know, if you've got bends in the step and it's been raining and you decide to go on it, you may slip. Also, like if you're using a step ladder, for example, you're supposed to use you've got to have 3-point contact at all times. And the number of times I've seen people on a ladder and they've got 2 hands in the air when one should be on the ladder. So again, are you using the correct equipment? Luckily nowadays, because step ladders and ladders are still the most common used kind of plant for working at height, especially at lower heights, there are plenty of ladders which actually have guarded baskets in them, or they've got a handrail on them as well. So look at what, you know, can you get the best, try and get the best form of plant available. Okay.
Great. So I know oh, sorry, what did you say, Jack?
Yeah, and so that's it for that section. And if you would like any more information, just put it in the chat and I can send you some PDFs on that.
Cool. Now, we are mainly talking about work from height today, but I wanted to bring in some other statistics that I found quite shocking. This is mainly in construction, but I'm sure it will apply to other health and safety industries as well. So just going through this, first of all, there are 38 fatalities on UK building sites every year. 38. So that's quite a lot if you think about it. And I'm just wondering, you know, what happens for these people? Yes, some might fall from height, some are just not focusing and something happens, but I can only wonder how much of these happened because they were having a mental health problem, or they had poor mental health and they weren't sleeping properly, they weren't focusing, they were taking risks. There's all sorts of things that comes into play, and if you listen to our previous sessions during the week, and if you want to go back to those videos, you'll find out how big a role our mental health will play in our safety. Next up was 2,000 major accidents that incapacitate the worker in such a way that they cannot work. This is yearly, 2,000 people. And it's sort of like that guy I explained, James Gorey, who is now in a wheelchair. He's not able to work at all, pretty much ever again, on site especially. That's 2,000 people a year. That's a staggering number. 46% of all occupational cancer cases in the UK are directly attributed to working in construction. Again, in one of the previous slides, I think we did that 2 days ago, stress can also lead to cancer. So people look at the end result, but they don't always look at why it started, where did it come from? And there's loads of other illnesses that stress can cause as well, but cancer was one of them. And again, in construction, we work long hours, we're under pressure all the time, there's a lot of stress constantly. And I'm, again, just wondering how much of that can be contributed to stress. 2.4 million man days are lost through injury or illness in construction. Again, all of these are UK figures, so it might be different in Africa or the United States or something, but I thought this will give you a general idea. You know, this can happen anywhere. 82,000 new and long-standing cases of work-related illness reported that can be directly attributed to working within construction. 82,000 cases a year, that's quite a lot, and some of them are long-standing. That could be burnout, fatigue, severe injury, that could be stress, PTSD, asthma, whatever that may be. Next up, 18% of these are related to stress, depression, and anxiety, amounting to 400,000 days that are lost each year. 18% of the 82,000, again, that's a staggering number that is just down to mental health. Next up, the study revealed manufacturing and construction sectors paid the most in fines as a result of health and safety breaches. The most of the fines increased to 13 million from 7 million, which is an increase of 83%. That was between 2018 to 2019. And construction represented 21% of the total collected fines from HSE. I say this year, 2019. I was meant to change that actually. Next up, in total, 57% of all working days lost to ill health were due to stress and anxiety. That's more than half. And if someone was able to manage their mental health, if they were able to get support, if they were able to speak up or speak to someone, that can be drastically reduced, because stress and anxiety can be preventable if you have the right help. And we just need to speak up, not man up, really. On average, 23.9 days are lost per case due to mental health, which means 23 days in a year, someone will be booked off if they've got a mental health problem. If you compare that to injuries, which is only 7.2% days, again, that's a massive, massive difference. So you're booked off a lot more when you are mentally unwell than when you have a physical injury. So workplace mental ill health is almost 2.5 times the physical impact of unsafe workplaces and working practices. And this is why I mentioned at the start earlier, I wonder how many of those 38 fatalities are due to poor mental health, because people are taking risks and they're not functioning properly. Next up, 84% of workers in the UK have suffered with mental health issues due to stress. That's just stress, 84% of us, which actually leads to a mental health problem. And if there's no early intervention or early help, it can lead to a mental health illness, which is obviously longer lasting or permanent. But the most shocking statistic for me by far, oh, there's one more, sorry. So stress, depression, or anxiety accounts for 1/5 of all work-related illnesses. That's, again, all of these are very, very high, staggering numbers. But this is the most shocking for me of everything. Every single working day in the UK, 2 construction workers take their own life. Every single day. Can you imagine? It's almost insane to think about it. And suicide is preventable, provided they have the help they need, they have support. This is why we're trying to educate people on mental health and the link between mental health and safety, and the importance of speaking up, reaching out, noticing when your colleague is suffering, reaching out to them and giving them that support, because they might not necessarily ask you for help, but you can easily see if things aren't really normal for them anymore, if things have changed. So I think in our very first session on Monday, we spoke about the characteristics where you will see why someone is struggling and how to pinpoint those. That was Tuesday, actually, Jack, wasn't it? I think so. So go back to our previous videos. So that was it. I don't even know the time. Oh, we've done really well today. Jack, we made it. So we've got 5 minutes left for questions. Here's our contact details at the very bottom where you see recordings. And that's just a short code. If you want to go and view all the recordings of the week, they'll be up there for the next week or two. So do go and visit them. They're half an hour each, so nice bite sizes. Any questions, just drop that in the chat for us. Have you got anything else to say, Jack? You're on mute. You're on mute.
I just noticed my email address is incorrect.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
I'm just putting that in the chat if anyone would like to get in touch. So what I do is I do audit what's already in place and let you know where you're not compliant, where you can, and how you can become compliant. So those are my details down there if anyone wants them. But yeah, I mean, so like on Tuesday, we looked at the kind of like behaviors that can impact accidents taking place in the first place. So we've just looked at this, like, was it 84% was the stress in the UK?
I believe so, yeah. Do you want me to go back?
And so if you imagine that stress is coming into the workplace. So before they've even come to work, they're already stressed out. And then you've got the stress of being at work in construction, which generally is highly deadline. You've got to get things done, got to make things happen. There's always this rushness to go on it. We don't tend to want to sit down and plan things. And often that can just make the person even more stressed, and you just don't know what's going to push people over the line. So it's just really taking that into consideration, how planning is so important, you know, to give people that chance to actually have a bit of a breather and like say, okay, I can do this in enough time. You know? And so what we're looking at tomorrow, so if you guys come back tomorrow, we're looking at the stress bucket, and it's really, I don't know what's the word to use. But like as soon as that we did the stress bucket exercise, I was like, wow, that was me when I was working in the construction industry.
Yeah.
That was me, right?
I think most people will recognize themselves.
All of that stress was in my bucket. And so it's a really, really great exercise. We're doing that tomorrow just to really highlight what we have started to think in the construction industry as normal. This is normal, you know, it's no longer normal. We've just made it normal, but actually it's something for us to work with and to so if you can come back tomorrow, you'll really enjoy that. I think you'll definitely get something for yourself.
Yep, absolutely. Any questions from anyone? Feel free to ask. Yes, please go ahead, Hilton.
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Oh, sorry.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, well done, Jags. That was a great presentation. It's really shocking. 2 construction workers every day. That's a really amazing statistic, especially I'm in construction and I know how it can be over the years being a builder and seeing so many people go through different things, you know. So I can understand that. So, but the question I wanted is how does the insurance claims come into this then?
Right. So I've worked with a number of insurance claim companies as a health and safety advisor. I'm the person they actually come to because they want to know, did I have everything in place? Like, did the employer have all the health and safety documents in place? Was there a construction phase plan? Was there a health and safety risk assessment? Was there a method statement? Had everyone been communicated how they were meant to do everything safely in the first place? Were they regularly monitored? Did you as a construction builder have everything in place? So I would have to provide that evidence. And if I had no evidence, you would be paying those kind of fines. So basically when I worked with a company, they were regularly getting fined nearly £120,000 a year, right? They were, at the time, they had a turnover of about 12 million and they were paying about £120,000 in fines.
Sure.
A year for claims. And so then once we put health and safety systems in place, we actually never had to pay, like over 4 years that we didn't have to, we could prove that we had everything in place. So if you're being a responsible employer and someone is just trying to claim, you know, these were fairly small claims. Luckily, none of these claims were serious work at height fall claims. These were like small injury claims, luckily, because we did have everything in place. So that's where you can have some peace of mind. If you have everything in place, it's very unlikely that you're going to have to deal with anything really major in the first place.
Right, and also the size of the company and the shape of the company. Yes. So that comes into play as well.
So in 2016, the fine, there used to be a limit. Like first companies with maybe a 2 million turnover would only get fined about £3,000-4,000 for a claim. Now they can claim, now the courts can fine a company that has a turnover of 2 million, up to 2 million, £800,000 maximum. So they increased the level of fines, like how much, because they found that smaller builders were just not taking it seriously and they just weren't putting anything in place.
Sure.
Yeah.
So that happened in 2016. So when we were looking at the fines, like that's gone so large and it's increased so much because in 2016, they start any cases from 2016, they all were paid out in 2018 and 2019, basically. So that's why there's been such a big bump up.
Sure. Great.
Thank you.
No worries.
Any other questions? We've got 1 minute to go. Feel free to drop it in the chat as well if you'd like to do that. I've dropped the link for all the recordings in the chat box, so you can just refer back to that if you want to click on that. It will be available, like I said, for a couple of weeks though. And if you have any questions, we've dropped our website details in there, so feel free to get in touch with us. And hopefully we get to see you all again tomorrow for our final session. Thank you very much for coming, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Have a great day. Thank you. Bye.